Episode starts with Mrs. Bhalla getting shocked seeing Raman with Niddhi. She goes and say what are doing here with Niddhi. He says Ishita was dead. She says while our house was suffering from her loss and you're enjoying your drink with her. He says stop all this, Ishita never cared for me and my kids. I asked her so many times not to interfere in others' life but still she went to help and what happened, Pallavi not even once came up to save her. She would be dead somewhere in the cliff and you should thank Niddhi who came and saved my company. She says no one can take her place and I know she was right. She says if she had helped you but she should not be here in your room at this piece of time. Raman stops her and says, Mom, I respect you so please stop and don't interfere in my personal matter. He tries to shut the door. Mrs. Bhalla cries and says come to your senses my son. He says why don't they forget her? Niddhi says don't worry it will take time. She says let me do one thing, I will take her place. Raman asks how? She says I will take care of the kids and family. Don't worry I will manage. They continue drinking. Mrs. Bhalla apologizes from Ishita and says Raman made me feel ashamed. Mr. Bhalla wakes up and consoles her. He asks her to sleep and thinks she is unable to forget her. Next morning, Niddhi scolds Neelu for taking Ishita's name and asks her to make food for the kids and her. Rui says why this auntie is wearing my ma's apron. Adi consoles her. Niddhi serves them sandwich. Simi fumes seeing her. Mr. Bhalla says we should ask Raman now. She serves breakfast to everyone. Romi asks about the food to Neelu. Niddhi says I asked Neelu to make this. She says the kids have grown up and they should know what to eat. Mr. Bhalla comments and elders too. Mrs. Bhalla gives Rui idly to eat. Romi and Simi also eat idly. Niddhi fumes and leaves. Romi and Mr. Bhalla discuss about the drama of the house. Raman wakes up. Niddhi says what happened to you, so much hangover. He says I will stay at home and Romi will come to report MS about everything. He asks her to stay at home too. She gives her sleeping pills. He says if you need my help, wake me up. He goes to sleep again. Simi asks about kids' tiffin. Neelu said Niddhi stopped me from making. She gets angry and says who is she to instruct you? Niddhi comes. She says give me the tiffin boxes I will put money. She says they will have food from canteen. Simi says Ishita never did this. The kids come and Niddhi gives them the tiffin. Rui remembers how Ishita cared for them. Mrs. Bhalla cries, worrying about Raman and kids. Vanda gets sad seeing this. She comes to her room and takes a bottle to drink. Bhalla stops him. He says what are you going to do? She says forgive me, I have no other choice, let me drink it. He says you are a strong woman, we all love you, I will take you to a doctor. She refuses to go to any doctor. He says trust me, I will always help you. She hugs him and cries. Simi asks Neelu to bring Mrs. Bhalla's medicines. Romi asks if there was any problem. She says I am worried for Rama and kids. Sarika says don't worry Niddhi will replace Ishita soon, she is taking care of the house and helping Raman as well. Romi yells at her. She leaves. He says we will have to do something, Simi. Mrs. Bhalla asks them to do it soon before kids have its effect. Adi and Rui open their tiffin and see money in it. Some boys come and take their money. Adi fights with them and gets hurt. Rui cries and calls the teacher. Teacher calls on Raman's phone. Niddhi sees it and switches the phone off. Simi tells everything to Shagun. Shagun says why Raman is allowing Niddhi to interfere in the house and the office. She gets a call and shock.